This week's Preppin data is all about the date time data type. So you can see that in our input data, we have a date and a time column. Our date, we can tell by the calendar up here, is being correctly stored as a date, whereas our time is being stored as a string. So if we just have a look at that within Tableau Prep, then to insert a step after our data input, rather than clicking on this first plus that appears here, if we hover along the little branch there, then we can insert a step in the middle. And I didn't know about that little step for ages. But in this case, we're just going to be looking at our data, so it wouldn't have mattered either way. So the issues that we have currently with our data, we can see that we've got these A and ANs and PMs. Some of them are capitalized, some of them aren't capitalized. So we've got some real issues. We want this column basically to be in the 24-hour format. And so that means that we'll have to treat our morning times and our afternoon times separately. Because, for example, if we just took away sort of PM of that, then we wouldn't know that that was supposed to be 14:04 instead of 2:04, for example. So to treat the mornings first, then we're just doing a quick calculator field where we're going to bring out the morning times and no other values, basically. So we're just saying, you know, if it contains AM or if it contains an A in the time column, then we're just going to get rid of those characters in our strings. And that brings it through all of our morning characters. And then the next thing we want to do, although most of our morning times we don't have to touch, once it gets to a minute past 12 AM, then that actually kind of means, you know, a minute past midnight rather than a minute past midday. So we need to roll that back to a 00. So to do that, we're just using a formula that's going to take say that if the left two values that we had in our morning times is 12, then we're just going to make that a 00. And then we're going to add on the rest of the string, those two right characters that we have, otherwise leave it alone. So now all that's left to do to sort of format these nicely is to have the colon in the middle. So what we basically want to do is take the right two values, have a colon, and then have the left two values, then have a colon, and then have the right two values. I don't know my lesson rights. But if we're writing it as a function, then we're going to have issues between where we've got 4 characters in our string and 3 characters in our string. So we're going to need to treat those differently in our formula. So we're just going to say if it's 3, then stick a 0 in front of it to make it better kind of format, and then take only the first left character, which will be the 7 in the 719, and then have a colon and the right two values, so the 19. And in the case otherwise, basically, if it's 4 characters long, then we want to take the first two values, a colon, and the second two values. So now our mornings are all formatted nicely. Our afternoons, we do much the same. The only kind of thing that I did differently here was, take out if it's PM, lowercase or uppercase. What I could have done, rather than having to write that twice, was just make everything uppercase in this field by just saying, clean, make uppercase, and then I could have just done that as one formula, but it's not really that important. Rather than writing a load of, if statements to get rid of all the messy, letters and punctuation, I just decided to use Tableau Prep's inbuilt functions here. So, I cleaned and removed the letters, I cleaned and I removed the punctuation, and then I also trimmed the spaces because we can see that space is going to be pesky and get in the way of our future string calculations. So then we get to this stage where we have all of our afternoon times. So then it just is a case of cleaning those up as well. So this formula might look a little bit complicated, but whenever you see a complicated formula, just read from the inside outwards. So the most inside bit is that we're doing the left of the afternoon times, so we're taking the first character there. So in our earlier case, that would have been a 2 there, that would have been a 2 there, that would have been a 5, etc. You get the point. And in order to add 12 to it, we're just saying, hey, treat this string, make it an integer, so that we can add 12 to it, but return it to a string because we're going to keep it as a string because we're going to add a colon onto it, and then we're just going to put the minutes there as well. So now both our morning and afternoon times are cleaned up nicely. And the only thing that we're going to do now is just in our time field at the moment, we've still got the sort of ugly values, if you like, the ones with all the PMs and that in there. So we're going to just need a little calculation to replace those. So we're saying for any values where the afternoon times isn't null, basically with that phrase, then we're going to replace in our time field with the afternoon time value and do the same for the morning. So if we look at this practically, then we'll see here that this value isn't null in the morning time, so we've taken it through to the time column, similarly with the afternoon times. And then we can get rid of those fields. And the only other requirement is to create that final date time field, and we know it's a date time because we've got this little clock next to our calendar there. And we're just going to create that by, if we look at the font, what we need to do, we just need there to be a date, comma, and a time. So our date field is all nicely made up already. Our time is kind of a little bit messy still. So we're just going to say make time and say those left values are going to be the hours, the right values are going to be the minutes, and we're going to put a nice 00 at the end there for our seconds. And that all works nicely, and we have our date time field and those separated out. There is one thing that I forgot to do, and that is there is a sneaky little value here hiding that doesn't have a colon in the middle. So I'm just going to use Tableau Prep Stability, where you can double click and update it to have a nice little colon. So thanks for watching, and I hope that was useful.